Hello, and welcome to Friday. Today we're going to be doing centers again. Remember that centers are silent. As you're working through this, you should be working silently, headphones are on, and your note sheet should look just like my note sheet does on the board. We're going to go ahead and get started here. So today's objective. Students will be able to use paragraph format, so we're going to be writing paragraphs today, to answer a TDQ from a given text by answering two questions based on the text in paragraph form. All right, so let me make a couple notes up here. So I'd like you to draw lines and claim. Here you're going to write argument. The claim you're making is really going to be your argument. The evidence you're going to use is going to be a quote. And the explanation is just going to be the explanation. And for TDQ, that means text dependent. So it's based off whatever text we're reading. So our news article. So go write article or a book. And so you'll read something, you'll be asked a question about it, and then in order to answer it, you're going to have to look back at that text and use evidence from it. So you'll notice today that I've labeled each section of our notes. So when you're thinking about what centers you're going to and looking at the board, this will say when you're doing what. All right. So if it says INM, you'll be doing this during the INM. So what does a perfect paragraph consist of? We're right here. A perfect paragraph consists of an argument. Put a star right where it says argument. It consists of a citation, which is another way to say evidence, and then it consists of an explanation. So we have three things that it consists of. Right here, I'm going to have you write an A. You're going to write a C and E. We did this a bit at the beginning of the year. Anytime you hear me refer to an ACE paragraph, this is the format we're going to be using. Again, argument, citation, explanation. So we'll start with the argument. What does the argument look like? You echo the question. So if the question is, what is the theme in this text? You would say something along the lines of, I believe the theme in the text is, or anything like that. Here are going to be some examples. I'm going to have you label that number one. You can always start your argument with, I believe. You also might be able to say, in my opinion. And finally, pretty straightforward, my argument is that the theme of this text is blank. Or my argument is that the main character is not a good leader. We're thinking about that essay we wrote for Odysseus. Next comes your citation. Right here, I'd like you to draw an arrow. And we're going to write evidence. Evidence and citation are synonyms. That means that they are the same. And so when we're looking for a citation, we're really just looking for evidence. And then I'm going to change my color to make it really noticeable. So your evidence is going to be right from the text. It's going to be a quotation. I'm even going to put quotation marks around that. So I know that whatever I'm taking for my evidence, I'm copying right out of the book. So it comes directly from the text. Fill that in. And then we'll see in this some ideas. So in the text it says, and then you would write your quotation mark, you would write the line you took. There you go. In paragraph 4, it says, and again, we're taking our quotation mark, copying it down from the text. That's our evidence. And then on page 21, it says, and again, we're using our quotation marks because we're copying right out of the book, so we're giving them credit for what they've done. I'm going to go ahead and erase this, so make sure you have it now. Pause the video if you need to. I'm going to erase it so I can scroll down. All right, so the explanation. Explanation always uses the word because. Go ahead and fill that blank in. Always uses the word because. And a couple of examples. I'm going to number this number 1 and this number 2. My evidence shows that Odysseus is a good leader because blah, blah, blah. Or this quotation supports my argument because it shows Odysseus is a good leader by blank. All right, so as we answer today, I'd like you always to use the ideas that I'm giving you on this front page. So if you're on the exit ticket or you're on the independent practice and you're trying to figure out how to start a sentence, I'd like you to flip back to this first sheet and use one of my sentence starters. All right. So when should I use this? And this is a pronoun that's replacing a. I'd like you to circle that, draw that arrow, and make that ace notation. And we're going to use it anytime you are answering a question based off something you've read. You'll notice that I made a typo here. Please correct this. Answering a question based off something you have read. So, for instance, when we are looking at Newsela articles, those are all text-based questions, and we're not answering in full paragraph form because it's multiple choice. But what I'd like us to do is really think about this citation and what's the evidence that we're finding as we're taking a multiple choice question like one on Newsela. If we're answering a question on a book and it's open-ended and not multiple choice, you should always be using ACE. It's going to be like 3 sentences, should go pretty quickly. All right? Again, now we're going to go ahead and do one together. So I'd like you right now you have 2 options. You can read that paragraph on your own and annotate, or I'm going to go ahead and read it and annotate. All right? If you choose to do it on your own, just skip forward a few seconds until you notice that I'm talking about the argument. All right? The waves in the Fort Pierce Inlet were picking up Saturday, so Ryan Shapiro and his friends decided to go out on their surfboards. I'm going to underline surfboard. I'm going to underline Fort Pierce Inlet because in tells me this is the place. All right? And then this is who, right? Ryan Shapiro and his friends. So I'm going to who, place, what. We have what, where, and who on that. The 18-year-old, so we know that Ryan is 18, paddled out, but suddenly found himself alone. He saw a stingray jump out of the water a few feet from him. Not thinking anything of it, though, he paddled out farther. That's when he felt it. A 4-foot shark bit into his right arm. So I'm going to say he was alone. He was not thinking. And a 4-foot shark, I'm going to circle this because it's really important, bit him. And I'm going to draw an arrow to that. And just as an annotation, just so I know. So I know that in that sentence, something painful happened. All right, so make sure you have annotations like this down. I'm going to go ahead and pause my video again, or I'm going to go ahead and erase, and then we're going to start on the argument in 1 second. All right, so I've erased my annotations. You have them on your paper, though, so they'll be helpful for you. The question is, what can we learn about swimming in the ocean from this article? So thinking back to, I'm going to scroll up really quickly, thinking back to my ideas, some ideas here, I'm going to use my opinion. So in my opinion, and I'm going to write a little bit big, so off the lines a little bit, make sure you're staying on the lines. In my opinion, it's a good start. And then I'm going to echo. So we can learn and I'm going to think back to the text. What did Ryan do wrong? What got him into this bad situation? And I know from my annotations that he was alone. So I know that, in my opinion, we can learn that swimming alone can be dangerous. Period. So first sentence, in my opinion, I use that idea that I gave earlier, and then I echo, we can learn that swimming alone can be dangerous. My next step is I'm going to try and find some evidence. So looking back, where is some evidence that supports that swimming alone can be dangerous? And I'm going to underline up here. Suddenly he found himself alone. and that he got bit by a shark. So my evidence, and I'm going to write this in a second, is that he was alone and he got bit by a shark. So flip over to the next page. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down with you. My citation. Again, I'm going to start with one of those sentence starters. In the text. In the text, comma, it says, and I'm going to put a quotation because I'm going to look back right now and make sure I'm copying it down exactly as it is. In the text it says, Ryan, in the text it says, I'm going to erase this a little bit just to make a quick change. Sorry about that. It says Ryan found himself alone. I'm going to put a period and then my end quotation marks. So I have my argument, my citation. Now I need to explain it. This evidence shows that being alone so I'm reminding my reader of my argument there. It's dangerous because you always need to have that word in there. Ryan got hurt. I'm going to go down a little bit. He was alone. So there you have it. We have one great example. It has some really good annotations. Really 3 sentences, but they're 3 really good sentences. So paragraphs don't have to be huge, but we want them to be really thorough, using great evidence, having a great explanation. That's all going to support your argument, which in this case is on the first page. All right, so what I'd like you to do now, you probably have a few minutes left before we rotate. I'd like you to go down here. Start with the let's practice. Go ahead and read that first one. Pause the video here. You're going to read this. Answer these. Make sure you're working in pencil because I'm going to put up some really good answers in a second, and then you'll come back on the video, double check your answers, and if you don't have something that looks really good or a lot like mine, I'd like you to erase it and get down my really good example. All right, continue working independently. Go ahead and read. Make sure you annotate that paragraph, and check back with me in a minute. All right, we're back. So what I did, I went through, I read it, I came up with an answer, which was my argument, and then I found evidence that supported that argument, and then I explained. So I'm going to just use my pen here in red to point you to where I'm going. So question, how does the bird play? And I said, I think the bird plays rough. Really simple. You probably agree based on what you read. But what I did then was I pulled out some really good evidence for it. So we're down here on the citation. In the text, it says, and you'll notice I changed the color because I'm pulling right from the book. It says, he tosses feathers and bones into the air with his beak. Next, I go ahead and explain it. This evidence proves that the bird plays rough because it shows that he throws stuff around. I can even go further, and I'm going to right now. Throws stuff around with his beak. Because the more detail you can add into the explanation, the better, right? The more we can explain why we chose the citation, the evidence that we did, the better. All right, so that's it for the video. You're now through the guided practice right here. You'll see that that tells you where you should be. You're now through the guided practice. When you get to the independent practice, I'm going to scroll down here. When you get to independent practice, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 different articles to read and come up with whole paragraphs for. Again, 3 times 3, that's only 9 sentences. It seems like a lot of reading, but make sure you're annotating so that you can save some time going back. And make sure that you're being really thorough, especially with those explanations. All right, so you'll complete that next section when you get to packet or IP, depending on what it says on the PowerPoint. All right. Make sure you're looking back at your notes the whole time to use some of those sentence starters I used, and that you're being very thorough. Keep working hard.